Order, please. Order, please. We'll now begin with the daily routine, beginning with presenting and reading of petitions. The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table a petition with the operative clause being, we, the undersigned, ask and request the Government of Nova Scotia, in particularly the Department of Transportation, Infrastructure and Renewal, to maintain and follow through on chip sealing the Lochbroom Loop Road beginning in 2020 and following years until completion. I have affixed my signature along with the 97 other signatures, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The report is tabled. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton-Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to table a petition with the operative clause being, we, the residents and friends of Port Royal, St. Mary's and Javerns Island, would like to protest the state of our roads. They are very dangerous with coastal erosion, missing or damaged guardrails, no shoulder in places, and are in generally poor condition. We, the undersigned, ask the government and the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal to recognize and prioritize our roads and repair them before someone is hurt or is killed. Mr. Speaker, there are 760 people who have assigned their signatures to this petition. I have signed my own as well, and I would ask that the House accept it on behalf of the people of my community.
Report is tabled. The petition is tabled, sorry. We'll now move on to presenting reports of committees, tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. As Speaker of the House of Assembly and pursuant to subsection 24(1) of the Ombudsman's Act and section 28 of the Public Interest Disclosure of Wrongdoing Act, I am pleased to table the annual report for the Office of the Ombudsman for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2019. The report is tabled. Statements by ministers. Government notices of motion. The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Treaty Day on October 1 each year marks the beginning of Mi'kmaq History Month in Nova Scotia, and whereas the purpose of Mi'kmaq History Month is to promote public awareness about the Mi'kmaq culture and heritage for all citizens of Nova Scotia, and whereas this year's poster promotes Let's Speak Mi'kmaq, and numerous events throughout the month recognize the importance of the Mi'kmaq language, therefore be it resolved all members of the House of this legislature recognize October 2019 as Mi'kmaq History Month in the province of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice, passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favour of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas October is Learning Disabilities Awareness Month, which helps reduce the stigma for people with learning disabilities. And whereas this month provides an opportunity to increase awareness about the need for people to get the supports they require to reach their full potential. And whereas Nova Scotia now has its first inclusive education policy, which provides guidelines on education and student supports and describes what all partners in education will be working toward, therefore be it resolved that all members of this legislature recognize October as Learning Disabilities Month and also recognize the importance of removing barriers to success for those with learning disabilities. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favour of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas for 33 years we have been celebrating Treaty Day to honour the holistic and historic relationship between the Crown and the Mi'kmaq, and whereas coming together on this day in peace and friendship is a great opportunity to reflect on our shared history and celebrate our relationship, and whereas 2019 is the United Nations International Year of Indigenous Languages, and Nova Scotia is continuing to work on the revitalization of Mi'kmaq language in the province, therefore be it resolved all members of this House of Assembly recognize October 1, 2019 as Treaty Day in the province of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favour of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister responsible for the status of women.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas October is Women's History Month, a time to celebrate the achievements of Nova Scotians who identify as women, and to look ahead at the work that must continue in order to achieve gender equality within our diverse communities. And whereas this month is an opportunity to talk about how we can continue to advance gender equality, support safety, and foster economic growth that benefits the whole province. And whereas this year's theme, Make an Impact, honours women pioneers of our past, like First Nations activist and teacher Anna May Akwash, Canada's first woman police officer, Rose Fortune, and women's rights activist, Muriel Duckworth. Therefore, be it resolved, the members of this House of Assembly recognize that women, girls, and gender-diverse Nova Scotians are key drivers of Nova Scotia's future, and we all have a role to play in ensuring Nova Scotia is an inclusive and safe place to live for people of all gender identities. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. It is agreed, but all those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would draw the members' attention to the East Gallery, where I'd like to introduce some special guests from the Department of Community Services. So with us today are Pam O'Coin, Director of Income Assistance, Alana George, Director of Solutions and Support, Tracy Embrett, Director of Service Delivery for the Central Region, Catherine Meany, Employment Support and Income Assistance Transformation Unit Team Member, and Colleen Hooper, the Director of Financial Operations and Risk. I would ask the members of this House to join me in giving our guests a warm welcome.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas yesterday, employees from the Department of Community Services received the Premier's Award of Excellence for their work on the free annual bus pass program for income assistance clients and their families in the Halifax Regional Municipality. And whereas more than 10,000 people have registered for this unlimited access to public transit, which ensures they can participate in society and attend appointments. And whereas the award recipients, along with many other departmental staff, have shown leadership and a willingness to go the extra mile for clients by developing a program that is inclusive and provides vulnerable Nova Scotians with the support they need to thrive. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of this legislature recognize these innovative civil servants for their service to Nova Scotians and offer congratulations on their well-deserved Premier's Award of Excellence. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. It is agreed, but all those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on September 30th, 2019, 3 current members and 1 recently retired staff member of the Nova Scotia Legislature will receive long service awards. And whereas Paul Reid, Ann Eiderstein will receive long service awards for 25 years, Angela Cromwell for 30 years, and Colleen Denham for 35 years. And whereas this group of dedicated civil servants continue to ensure successful operation through their respective roles with Ledge TV, the Legislative Library, and Hansard. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House of Assembly join me in congratulating Paul Reid, Ann Van Eiderstein, Angela Cromwell, and Colleen Denham on receiving their long service awards from the province of Nova Scotia in recognition of their outstanding and dedicated service to the province. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? It is agreed, but all those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I make an introduction?
Permission granted.
Direct my colleagues' attention to the East Gallery, where we have some guests joining us today. Lana Randall and Kelly Cull with Canadian Cancer Society, and Judy Edgar, a two-time breast cancer survivor and an active volunteer with Canadian Cancer Society. I'd ask my colleagues to please give them a warm welcome in the House.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 1 in every 8 women in Nova Scotia will develop breast cancer in her lifetime, making it the most commonly diagnosed cancer, and whereas important services like the Nova Scotia Breast Screening Program are essential for early detection and diagnosis and help increase the chances of successful treatment for many women, and whereas October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month and offers us all the opportunity to raise awareness, take action for breast health, and thank the many dedicated healthcare providers and advocates for the important work they do. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House acknowledge October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month and do what they can to support this important cause. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favour of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Seniors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I make an introduction, please?
Permission granted.
I'd like to draw your attention to the East Gallery, where we have Bill Berryman today, who is chair of the Group of 9, a wonderful advocacy group in the province. So, Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas October 1st is National Seniors Day and International Day of Older Persons, whereby we recognize and celebrate the significant contributions that older Nova Scotians have made and continue to make to their communities. And whereas the 2019 theme of International Day of Older Persons is the journey to age equality, resonating with the Government of Nova Scotia Department of Seniors Shift Action Plan, focusing on reframing the discussion on aging by leading a shift in thinking and in practice that values, promotes, and supports the fact that diverse older Nova Scotians make our province a better place to live. And whereas we encourage all Nova Scotians to take the time, especially today, to reach out, to connect with, and thank a senior. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly acknowledge National Seniors Day and International Day of Older Persons by recognizing the important impact older Nova Scotians have made and continue to make in our province. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favour of the motion please say aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Permission to make an introduction, Mr. Speaker.
Permission granted.
I'd ask Andrew Payton, who is with us today in the East Gallery, to rise. Andrew is recently just celebrating his retirement. So I hereby give notice on a future day that I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas public service is a high calling that requires a great deal of dedication, commitment, and hard work. And whereas Andrew Payton has been a solid leader of municipal affairs and housing, mentoring new planners and others entering the department, answering questions, and through his careful work, demonstrating what excellence in public safety looks like. And whereas Andrew recently retired from his job at Municipal Affairs and Housing after almost 42 years with the provincial government. Therefore, be it resolved, the members of this legislature join me in thanking Andrew Payton for his dedication and service on behalf of Nova Scotians and wish him the very best in his retirement. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and pass this without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favour of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of the Public Service Commission, on behalf of the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Premier Stephen McNeil and MLA for Annapolis, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas yesterday, September 30th, 3 individuals and 3 groups received the Premier's Award of Excellence, which is the most prestigious award government in government. And whereas we are always striving to do better and to deliver the highest quality programs and services to Nova Scotian families, communities, and businesses. And whereas that's why it is important to take the time to recognize employees who go above and beyond, to demonstrate the courage to step into new territory to achieve their goals. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House of Assembly congratulate these employees and all civil servants across the province who work tirelessly to serve the citizens of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. It is agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Immigration and Acadian Affairs.
Monsieur le Président, à une date ultérieure, je demanderai l'adoption de la résolution suivante. Attendu que partout dans le monde, les spécialistes des langues jouent un rôle majeur dans l'établissement de liens entre les nations et dans la promotion de la paix, de la compréhension et du développement, et attendu que le 30 septembre a été déclaré Journée internationale de la traduction par les Nations Unies, et attendu que le gouvernement de la Nouvelle-Écosse continue de s'appuyer sur le travail et le développement d'une équipe de traducteurs professionnels dédiés pour permettre l'accès aux services gouvernementaux à nos communautés acadiennes et francophones. Par conséquent, il est résolu que les membres de l'Assemblée législative se joignent à moi pour remercier tous les traducteurs de la Nouvelle-Écosse et reconnaître l'importance de leur travail pour permettre aux Néo-Écossais de mieux se comprendre, d'avoir accès aux services dont ils ont besoin et de participer pleinement à la vie de notre province. Monsieur le Président, je demande l'adoption de cette résolution sans préavis et sans débat. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas around the world, language professionals play a major role in connecting nations and fostering peace, understanding, and development. And whereas September 30 was declared International Translation Day by the United Nations, and whereas the Government of Nova Scotia continues to rely on the work and dedication of a devoted team of professional translators to make government services available to our Acadian and Francophone communities. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly join me in thanking all translators across Nova Scotia and acknowledge the importance of their work in allowing Nova Scotians to better understand each other, access the services they need, and participating fully in the life of our province. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. It is agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of the Public Service Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas yesterday, September 30th, more than 300 Nova Scotian government employees received the Long Service Award for 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and even 50 years of service to the province, an incredible achievement. And whereas there are more than 10,000 employees within the province committed to serving the citizens of Nova Scotia over many years, and whereas across the province, government employees are providing families, businesses, and communities with the programs and services they rely on day in and day out. Therefore, be it resolved that the Nova Scotia Legislature congratulate these long service employees and all civil servants in the province who work tirelessly to serve the citizens of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a waiver of notice and passage without debate. There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? It is agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. The motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on the future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas from May 17 to the 26th, Halifax played host to the 2019 Memorial Cup, which saw the top 4 teams from the Canadian Hockey League compete and award the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies as the 101st champion of the coveted Memorial Cup. And whereas several celebratory events occurred, including the official arrival of the Memorial Cup on the HMCS Sackville, an opening ceremony and dinner, a military appreciation tour, fan fest, and street fest, which saw over 15,000 people in attendance, showcasing 17 Nova Scotian artists. And whereas the Halifax Mooseheads Hockey Club, key sponsors, and the 2019 Memorial Cup host committee did a superb job of organizing, welcoming teams, and over 79,000 spectators, and sharing our second to non-maritime hospitality that led to a significant economic impact for our province. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House of Assembly join me in congratulating the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies and thanking the host committee sponsors and Moosehead Hockey Club for hosting what the Canadian Hockey League has described as the best Memorial Cup of all time, and once again displaying that Nova Scotia, the birthplace of hockey, is a leading destination in the hosting of major events. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice, passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? It is agreed. For all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. We'll now move on to introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill, an act to amend Chapter 27 of the Acts of 1998, the Wilderness Areas Protection Act.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 27 of the Acts of 1998, the Wilderness Areas Protection Act.
Bill number 163, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 27 of the Acts of 1998, the Wilderness Areas Protection Act.
Ordered that this bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting Funding of Sports Stadiums.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting Funding of Sports Stadiums.
Bill number 164, entitled An Act Respecting Funding of Sports Stadiums.
Ordered that this bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 8 of the Acts of 1990, the Emergency Management Act, respecting emergency management and telecommunications.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 8 of the Acts of 1990, the Emergency Management Act, respecting emergency management and telecommunications.
Bill number 165, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 8 of the Acts of 1990, the Emergency Management Act, respecting emergency management and telecommunications.
Ordered that this bill be read a second time on a future day. We'll now move on to notices of motion. Statements by members. The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize Treaty Day, an important day for all of Nova Scotia. It's an opportunity to sit back and reflect on the importance of the treaty relationship and to celebrate the achievements and leadership of the Mi'kmaq community. Treaty Day began in 1986 with the signing of the proclamation by then Grand Chief Donald Marshall Sr., but we have been proud of our strong, productive, and respectful working relationship with the Mi'kmaq people for much longer than that. I hope everyone takes the opportunity to participate in one of the many Treaty Day activities going on in Halifax today and to learn more about the Mi'kmaq culture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
On this treaty Day, I am glad to stand and celebrate our relationship with the Mi'kmaq, on whose unceded and ancestral land we stand, and to recommit to the ongoing responsibility of all treaty people to build a healthy relationship of mutual respect and caring. Today is also a time to acknowledge how the treaties of peace and friendship have been broken, notably through the policy of centralization and the long period of residential schools. Indeed, Treaty Day in Nova Scotia follows hard on Orange Shirt Day, a day set aside to remember all the children who survived residential schools in Canada and the more than 3,000 who did not. Last night on Native Twitter, I was privileged to read Mi'kmaq contemporaries of mine reflecting on their experience of being parented by residential school survivors. That history is still very present and very painful. Ms. Goy. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kings South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise on Treaty Day and the beginning of Mi'kmaq Heritage Month to recognize Lorraine Whitman from Glooscap First Nation in Kings County, who has dedicated her life's work to serving and advocating for First Nations and Métis women and girls. Ms. Whitman's achievements include serving as president of the Nova Scotia Native Women's Association and 15 years as an elected band councillor. In addition to this active political life, Ms. Whitman has been an innovative entrepreneur who developed a greenhouse business, a fair trade coffee company, and created the eagle feather holders that distinguish our courts in Nova Scotia. Recently, Lorraine was elected president of the National Native Women's Association of Canada, where she hopes to advance the goals of unifying nation-to-nation relations and fostering economic development. I invite all members of the Nova Scotia House of Assembly to join me in congratulating Lorraine on her recent election and for her lifelong commitment to fostering the well-being of First Nations and Métis women and girls. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cumberland South.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the West Gallery, I'd like them to stand as I name them off. Sierra, Sophie, Gracie, Ella, Julia, Lily, Brooke, Emily, Allie, and Emma. Mr. Speaker, they're here today with their parents and their coaches, and I introduce the first ever 12 and under all-females baseball provincial team.
The honourable member for Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to congratulate the Wildcats 12 and under all-girls team on the recent win, giving them the little title of the inaugural Baseball Nova Scotia 12 and under all-girls championships. Coaches Joe Reed, Ian Taper, Blaine Weatherby, and Jason Dickey, I hope I announced them right, we're so proud of these hardworking girls who didn't seem to realize what history they had made and bringing the championship banner to Oxford for our very first ever provincial title in Oxford. The Oxford Wildcats are made up of the girls throughout Nova Scotia's areas. The team consists of Julia Sharp, Sierra Foley, Lily Dickey, Grace Weatherby, Sophie Mazer, Emily McClellan, Ella Taper, Addie Fisher, Brooke Hunsley, Emma Reed, Allie McDonald. I ask the House to join me in congratulating the first ever provincial under 12 girls team. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize Corporal Deepak Prasad, an RCMP officer and new resident to the Timberley Prospect communities. On November 11th of 2018, Corporal Deepak Prasad was marching in the Nantiganesh Remembrance Day ceremonies when an elderly man collapsed in front of him. Several firefighters who were also in attendance performed CPR on the gentleman while Corporal Prasad used an automated external defibrillator from a local church until EHS arrived and took over the care of this patient. The quick response, training, and skills of Corporal Prasad were actions that saved the life of this gentleman. On Saturday, May 25th of 2019, the St. John Ambulance Investiture and Award Ceremony honored Corporal Prasad with a life-saving award at Government House. I ask the members of the Nova Scotia House of Assembly to join me in thanking Corporal Prasad for his kindness and selfless act to save another person's life and his courage to act when the need was there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Pictou Centre.
Mr. Speaker, permission for an introduction.
Permission granted.
Mr. Speaker, I'll ask all members of the House to direct their attention to the West Gallery, where two constituents from Pictou Centre are with us here today. My sister Joan from Trenton and Marie Bowden from New Glasgow. They are visiting the legislature for the first time, and I'd ask all members to give them a warm welcome.
The honourable member for Pictou Centre.
Mr. Speaker, a Pictou County singer, Nicole Ross, placed second in vocal at the National Music Festival. Nicole is a graduate of North Nova Education Centre and has entered her third year at McGill University in Montreal. Ross specializes in opera singing and competed against other vocalists to finish second. Her next goal is to complete her undergraduate degree, pursue a master's, and obtain an apprenticeship with an opera company. According to numerous mentors and music teachers from the local community, her success is not a surprise to them. They know she's extremely talented, dedicated, and committed to being the best. I would like all members of this legislature to join me and wish this very exceptional singer great success as she pursues a career in music. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Clayton Park West.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Permission granted.
We have with us in the East Gallery Doreen and Reginald Crick, who are visiting us today, and I have a wonderful member statement for this amazing 85-year-old who wrote 2 books recently. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, on Seniors' Day, I would like to recognize a wonderful constituent of mine, Doreen Crick. Doreen moved to Canada in 1967 from the Caribbean Leeward Islands during the country's centennial birthday. She was immediately employed as a nurse at a veterans hospital and later went on to become the unit coordinator. Doreen is an active member of my community. She is always delightful and shows positive energy to the people around her. Not only is she a grandmother herself, she is dedicated to helping other grandmothers who are affected by the disaster of AIDS in Africa. Doreen is an exceptional volunteer, and she was able to publish 2 books at the age of 85. Both books, Seawater and The Beautiful Caribbean Rainbow Islands, discuss slavery and colonialism. Both books are written to educate the youth. The message of her books help youth to learn to build stronger community with a smile rather than pointing fingers. Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate Doreen on all she has accomplished. She is truly an inspiration to many, including myself. Thank you, Doreen.
The honourable member for Sydney River, Myra Lewisburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate Miss Aubrey MacArthur of Howie Centre after she recently donated her hair to Angel Hair for Kids. She made the donation during the Caleb's Courage Superhero Walk, Run or Fly fundraiser on September 15, 2019, which took place in Petersfield, Westmount. This event is so close to the young girl's heart as her young brother Caleb passed away from cancer in 2015. This event takes place to raise monies to assist families in Cape Breton who are dealing with this illness. Although this was the 3rd time this 10-year-old girl cut her hair for a wig donation, it was the first time she asked people to sponsor her, and she raised $3,500. I stand here to congratulate Miss Aubrey MacArthur on her donation and raising awareness for such a great cause, and want to wish her the best in all her success and future endeavors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Waverley Fall River, Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my honour to stand today to congratulate Chima Aquatic Club on their 50th anniversary. It was in 1969 when the club was formed, and over the last 50 years has put our community on the map on the national and international paddling stage. 3 years in a row, top paddling club in Canada, many international and Olympic champions. A weekend celebration was held with the first inductees to the Chima Hall of Fame, being introduced and unveiling of the newly named Frank Garner Boathouse. I ask all members of the legislature and congratulating all the past and present members of Chima and best wishes on your continued success. Well done, Chima. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize 3 Sea Cadets from the 305 Royal Canadian Sea Cadet Corps, Sackville, on their outstanding accomplishments during the National Sailing Regatta in Kingston, Ontario, earlier in September. Chief Petty Officer 2nd Class Drew Bryand, Chief Petty Officer 2nd Class Matthew Stojak, and Petty Officer 1st Class Caitlin Taylor sailed alongside some of the top sailors in Canada during this week-long event. Out of the 25 teams that participated in this year's regatta, Chiefs Briand and Stojak placed 11th overall, and Petty Officer Taylor placed 16th overall. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity and ask all members of this House to congratulate these Sea Cadets on their accomplishments and for continued success in their future adventures. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cape Breton Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to make an introduction, if I may.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce a wonderful woman from my community. Her name is Yvonne Doucette, who's up there wearing an orange shirt today for Orange Shirt Day yesterday. She's a social worker in child welfare and Mi'kmaq Family and Children's Services of Nova Scotia, and she's also a supervisor for temporary care and custody. She's a resident of the Bulledeg First Nation, but she's also one of 12 children that were children of both Jean and former Chief Noel Doucette, who Chief Doucette was a residential school survivor in Shubenacadie, and I would like to welcome her.
The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize September 15th as Open Farm Day across Nova Scotia, as well as to congratulate the Bar M Ranch and Meister Field and Forest, both of New Ross, for participating in this event. Open Farm Day is a province-wide event held each year on the third Sunday of September and offers the opportunity for local farms to open their doors to the general public. Local farmers are an important pillar of our local economy. Today, more than ever, it is important for us to understand where our food comes from and to encourage folks to buy locally produced vegetables, fruits, herbs, and meat products wherever possible. Open Farm Day gives us the chance to meet the hardworking local farmers who put this bounty on our tables and support our food security. Mr. Speaker, I invite the members of the House of Assembly to join me in recognizing and congratulating Bar M Ranch, Meister Field and Forest, and all our local farmers who participated in Open Farm Day and who provide us with nutritious food. Thank you.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, friends for life is a term that you use when someone plays a major part in your life that you're very, very grateful for. That is true of a very good friend, Alfie MacLeod, a former colleague of many of us here in this chamber. For 45 years, Alfie has dedicated his time to the PC Party of Nova Scotia and the constituents he served. But friendship goes beyond politics. It goes to the times of joy and sorrow, of plenty and want. Alfie and I have experienced both together. My wife Chrissy and Alfie's wife Shirley have been bound much like the two of us. Alfie will be moving on as he pursues federal office. I ask all members of this legislature to join me in wishing Alfie well in this, the next chapter of his life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cape Breton Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, today, October 1st, marks our annual Treaty Day in Nova Scotia, and yesterday marked Orange Shirt Day, which brings awareness to residential schools and their survivors. Mr. Speaker, acknowledgement of Treaty Day is celebrated throughout numerous Mi'kmaq communities with traditional dancing, drumming, speeches, and luncheons, and educational lessons and activities like the signing of friendship treaties. Mr. Speaker, I was honoured to take part in today's flag-raising ceremony and church service for Treaty Day in Halifax, and I would like to congratulate Grand Chief Norman Sillaboy of Eskazoni as he journeys forward in his new role of leading the Mi'kmaq Grand Council, and I would also like to thank Chief Noel Doucette for tabling the successful motion at the Indian Advisory Council that led the way to the closing of the Shubenacadie Residential School. It was no small feat, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Mr. Speaker, over the summer, the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre bought a building just down the street from my constituency office in Dartmouth. Though the centre is still undergoing renovations, this space will go a long way to meet the needs of urban Mi'kmaq and other First Nation peoples living throughout Dartmouth. Most in this House will be familiar with the amazing work that the Friendship Centre does in the North End of Halifax and beyond. Programs in employment, education, health, justice, culture, language, and more. Over the past several years, I have enjoyed visiting the centre with my children who take part in the kids and culture programming at the Mi'kmaq Child Development Centre. On this Treaty Day, the first day of Mi'kmaq History Month in this province, I would like to say Walalan to the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre for all of the excellent work it has done since opening its doors in 1973. I'm thrilled that the centre is now part of our community in Dartmouth North, and I look forward to supporting the work done there in any way that I can. Thank you.
The honourable member for Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Sally Wilson, a local artist, is using her art to help give back to the community. Sally, originally from Ontario, moved to the community of Spryfield a few years ago. Sally is known for her bold, abstract paintings and has held sold-out shows right across Canada. Sally now has a studio on the second floor of the Shabukto Connections building in Spryfield and has an exhibit opening on October 3rd. She is generously donating 30% of the proceeds from her show to Shabukto Connections to help them offer more programs to the community. Her show, entitled Coming Home, is an expression of her feelings toward her new community. Mr. Speaker, Sally has always recognized the importance of giving back to her community, and through her support of Shabukto Connections, she's able to make a real difference in the lives of people who rely on the programs and services provided there. I would like to thank Sally for her generous contributions to such an important organization and wish her happiness in her new home. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to thank Colleen Batstone, Facilities Manager at the East Dartmouth Community Centre. This centre opened its doors first as a Red Cross emergency shelter during Hurricane Dorian, and then later as an HRM comfort shelter. Residents in Dartmouth East and surrounding areas were provided with warm food, a place to rest and charge their phones, and even get a shower. For many, it took days before their lights came on at home, and the East Dartmouth Community Centre went a long way in putting the well-being of people first. Mr. Speaker, I ask that all members of this House thank Colleen Batstone for the effort she put into these very important initiatives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, on this Treaty Day, I would like to acknowledge and express my appreciation for the work of the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre on Gottingen Street. The Friendship Centre regularly makes its space available for all sorts of gatherings and constantly innovates to offer more services for the largest Indigenous community in Nova Scotia, which is in the Halifax area. It offers early childhood programming, laundry facilities, housing support for those looking to obtain a GED, and this year, a new program with Mount St. Vincent University, which will enable people to take first-year credit classes at the Friendship Centre. I am particularly grateful to how the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre has responded to needs in the community that are by no means exclusive to Indigenous people. This is how, for example, the opioid treatment program, Direction 180, and the Needle Exchange program, Mainline, got their start under the auspices of the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Centre. Willalan.
The honourable member for Lunenburg.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize 3 local business owners who joined forces to help provide a warm meal to those without power in the days following Hurricane Dorian. On September 10th, Matt Krizan, owner of Mateus Bistro, located in Mahone Bay, provided warm meals to those left without power from the storm. Matt and his wife Kyra served up veggie curry and chicken pen free of charge. Meredith Bell, owner of Ma Bell's Country Condiments, a local catering company, donated compostable takeout containers to the cause. This meant those without power could take home a warm meal with no worry of doing the dishes. Mr. Speaker, I would ask that you and all members of this House of Assembly join me in thanking these 3 business owners in providing a warm meal for those left without power from Hurricane Dorian. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Colchester, Musquodoboit Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this year, I had the honour of participating in the recognition of 2 residents of Brookfield, both members of the Brookfield Men's Club. Terry Henderson was presented with a citation as he retired from a 42-year position as club secretary, a position his father, who was the founder of the club, had himself held for 40 years. Another member, Austin Ross, received the Eagle Award for his many years of service dedicated to improving community life. We must never forget the selfless hours that are given to our communities by committed volunteers. Without them, many of the services we take for granted would be unavailable or too costly to enjoy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Halifax Armdale.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order. Monsieur le Président, je me lève aujourd'hui pour une question de règlement. Le 27 septembre, au cours de la période des questions, le député d'Argyle-Barrington a indiqué que le caucus libéral n'avait pas accepté de rencontrer la Fédération acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse, la FAN, au sujet du rapport de la Commission de d'élimination des circonscriptions électorales. J'aimerais clarifier les faits en tablant ces documents. Comme l'Assemblée peut le voir, le bureau du caucus libéral a contacté la FAN par courriel électronique et par téléphone pour proposer un certain nombre de dates potentielles. Nous étions prêts à rencontrer la FAN aussitôt que juillet. Je crois comprendre, Monsieur le Président, qu'une date de réunion a été fixée pour ce mois-ci. En tant que ministre, je suis fière de mon travail et du travail de mes collègues du caucus avec nos partenaires acadiens. Je rencontre régulièrement la FAN et plusieurs autres organismes acadiens. Ces partenariats ont donné lieu à de nombreuses initiatives passionnantes, telles que l'achat récent d'une nouvelle école pour CSAP à Dartmouth, le soutien au quartier culturel de Shettycamp et un plan d'action en matière d'immigration francophone élaboré en concertation avec la FAN. Mon soutien, notre soutien aux Acadiens est clair. Merci beaucoup. On September 27th, during question period, the member from Argyle-Barrington indicated that the Liberal caucus did not agree to meet with the Fédération acadienne of Nouvelle-Écosse, la FAN, about the Electoral Boundaries Commission report. I'd like to clarify the record, and I've just tabled some documents. As the House will see, the Liberal caucus office contacted La FAN by email and by phone to propose a number of potential dates. We as a caucus were prepared to meet as early as July. I understand now, Mr. Speaker, a meeting has been set for this month. As Minister, I am proud of my work and the work of my Liberal colleagues with Acadian partners. I meet regularly with La FAN and many other Acadian organizations. This partnership has resulted in so many exciting initiatives, like the most recent purchase of a new school for CSAP in Dartmouth, support for the quartier culturel de Shettycamp, the launch of a Francophone Immigration Action Plan developed in consultation with La FAN, and so many more. In fact, our support for Acadians is clear. Thank you.
I do want to thank the member for raising that. I'll take that point of order under advisement and come back to the House. And it does give me an opportunity as Speaker to remind all members that multiple languages are spoken on the floor of the House, which is perfectly permissible. But this particular speaker only understands English fluently. So I would ask and remind all members that if you are asking a question in a language other than English, or you are making a statement, a member statement, or any words that are spoken on the floor of the House other than English are repeated immediately following in English for purposes of clarity for the speaker and all members of the House to understand, as well as it would be very useful to table the translation of what was spoken to help our staff in Hansard for that. So I do appreciate that. Thank you. The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today on the first day of Women's History Month to celebrate two of the strong, progressive, conservative women who paved the way for the political landscape we see today. I want to recognize Gladys Porter, the first woman ever elected to the legislature. Thank you. In 1960, she proudly represented the PC Party and the people of Kings North. I want to recognize Maxine Cochrane, who served as the Minister of Transportation, making her the first female cabinet minister in our province's history. And I want to recognize all the strong women here in this chamber today who work hard to help improve our province. I am so grateful for every barrier that every female politician has ever broke down to make things more accessible for political women today and in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dartmouth South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge Mi'kmaq Treaty Day. Today is the first day also of Mi'kmaq History Month, and I hope we will all take these next few weeks to recognize the Indigenous roots of our province. One exciting upcoming event celebrating this history will be the 2020 North American Indigenous Games held here in Nova Scotia. This is the first time the Indigenous Games have ever been hosted in Atlantic Canada, and it will be the largest multi-sport event ever to be hosted here in Nova Scotia, with 756 Indigenous nations competing in 15 different events. We are very proud to be hosting the canoe kayak events on Lake Bannock in Dartmouth. Before it was a competitive sport, canoe was integral to Mi'kmaq way of life, culture and heritage, and the water courses of Dartmouth, including Lake Bannock, have a long history as Indigenous trade routes. I hope all of you will join me next summer in Dartmouth on the shores of beautiful Lake Bannock.
The honourable member for Kings North with
Mr.
30
Speaker,
seconds.
I rise today to acknowledge my constituency assistant and friend Martha McQuarrie's candidacy in the federal election for the Kings Hants region. Martha serves as a chair for the Landmark East Foundation, a director of the Kentville Rotary Club, and an executive member of the PC Party of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, Martha has worked hard for the people of Kings North in both her professional and volunteer roles, and I expect she will continue to do so for the people of Kings Hants as a Member of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate Martha on her candidacy and wish her
Time allotted for member statements has expired. We'll now move on to oral questions put by members to ministers. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Typically around this time of year, we would be asking about we'd ask the government to update the House on the summer tourism season. Specifically, around this time of year, we would tend to ask the government about the passenger loads on the Nova Scotia to Maine ferry. So I'd like to ask the Premier today, could the Premier provide the House with an update on the number of passengers who have used the CAT ferry during the 2019 sailing season?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Premier, Mr. Speaker, thanks very much for the question from the Leader of the Official Opposition. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we have followed 2 consecutive record tourism seasons for the province of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member know that the numbers were put out more recently. There was, for a period of time, the numbers were down about 2%. What he would also know, his railing against the Yarmouth ferry, we've seen room nights down over 30% since the ferry has not been operating, Mr. Speaker, which says clear indication the important role that service plays. And it's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that the Leader of the Conservative Party continues to go against those hard-working tourism operators who rely on that service, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the answer is 0. The answer is 0. The Premier can hide from many things, but he can't hide from that he's let the tourism operators down. We've learned in March that Nova Scotians paid $8.5 million to renovate a ferry terminal in Bar Harbour. In the last couple of days, we've come to learn that Nova Scotians have paid a subsidy of $11.4 million for this season alone. I'd like to ask the Premier, can the Premier tell this House how much is being paid to Bay Ferries in management fees, and if that's included in the $11.4 million?
The Honourable Premier.
Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, we continue to appreciate the relationship we've built with Bay Ferries. They've been an operator, Mr. Speaker, that's continued to provide service not only in the Yarmouth region, Mr. Speaker, they also do the ferry in Digby, Mr. Speaker. You would also know they have a global footprint where they provide services across the globe, Mr. Speaker. How fortunate are we that a world-class operator continues to want to work in this province, Mr. Speaker, and we're looking forward to ensuring that service is up and going, Mr. Speaker, so we continue to support the tourism operators in southwestern Nova Scotia and across, no matter how much the Conservative Party continues to rail against the growth in our tourism in this province, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier, a former small business person, would realize how rare it is a company could have $11.4 million in revenue. Imagine how many tourism operators, how many companies around this province are fortunate to have $11.4 million in revenue. This is a company that has delivered no service to Nova Scotians and still received $11.4 million. Bay Ferries had set the start of the season for June 21st. They've also set the close of the season for October 15th. That's just 2 weeks away. We've missed 103 sailing days, and yet taxpayers have paid $20 million. That's almost $200,000 for each and every day that the ferry didn't sail, that no passengers were moved. Can the Premier tell this House, will the ferry sail at all in 2019?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable for the question. Mr. Speaker, despite the negativity of the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, the optimism that we see in southwestern Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, around the support of that ferry and the reality, Mr. Speaker, that we believe we have the right operator, Mr. Speaker, we're going to the right community. We will continue to work with them, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that we support the tourism season. We saw what happened, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. The Honourable Premier has the floor.
What happened, Mr. Speaker?
Order, please. The Honourable Premier has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Honourable Member is suggesting that we're misleading someone in the House. Let's talk about, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member stood in the House on the 27th of September suggesting there are 985 FOI pops in this province, and he suggested 562 were under review. That's absolutely false. There are 1,985 FOI pops, only 63 related to government, Mr. Speaker. If the Honourable Member wants to start debating facts in this House and who's misleading the House, check the record, Mr. Speaker. I think you spoke to him about that.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to direct a couple of questions to the Premier about Northern Pulp. 2 weeks ago, it was revealed in court proceedings in connection with the company that the province had entered into an agreement with Northern Pulp to pay hundreds of thousands and perhaps considerably more for costs associated with the company's environmental assessments. Now, these are the court's own words from the decision in that case, which I'll table. Once the province approves under the funding agreement, would there be an about-face that denies approval under the Environment Act? Likely, the contractual approval would facilitate the statutory approvals, end quote. Will the Premier acknowledge that the independence of the environmental assessment system has been brought into question by these payments to Northern Pulp?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honourable for the question. No, Mr. Speaker, I would not. I want to tell the Honourable Member what happens. He knows we are closing Boat Harbour 9 years, 10 months early. We know there's a liability associated with that. We were in negotiations about that liability. The payment that he's referring to is associated with that, Mr. Speaker. But the reality of it is what we did say to the company, that if they are not here operating, they are not going to use just the excuse of Boat Harbour being closed, Mr. Speaker, that we would require them. We would then have a very different discussion if they leave before that. So, Mr. Speaker, the entire conversation was about our liability associated with Boat Harbour.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
In these same court-filed documents, it was also revealed that it was a contractual stipulation of the province's payments to the company that Northern Pulp would keep these payments secret. The funding agreement, in fact, and I've just tabled also the same documents that this comes from, Mr. Speaker, in fact says that except as required by law, regulatory or judicial authority, Northern Pulp shall keep private and confidential and not make public or divulge this agreement, end quote. Will the Premier then explain why his government insisted that its payments to the company be kept secret from the people of the province?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, again, I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. I've said many times, Mr. Speaker, there's a liability associated with closing Boat Harbour early. The government would have a responsibility to deal with that liability. We knew that in 2015. We know that today, Mr. Speaker. We'll continue to work with the company and the community about what the actual true cost of that liability will be, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to make sure that we meet all of the obligations associated with our role as government to that project.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, today on Treaty Day, we reflect solemnly on the 52 years through which the people of Pictou Landing have had to endure an endless stream of pollutive effluent running through their backyard, and we reflect also with hope that it is only 121 days until Boat Harbour by law is closed. Will the Premier take the occasion of this final Treaty Day before the Boat Harbour deadline to unequivocally reaffirm
that not 1 litre of Abercrombie effluent will flow into Boat Harbour after January 31st, 2020?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, he would know the legislation that's put before this House. There's a process ongoing around an environmental assessment for the utility, or sorry, for the mill to meet, Mr. Speaker. There has been no, my understanding, there's been no application or approval. We're still moving towards January 31, 2020.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Transportation. The PC caucus learned from a FOIPOP application on the ferry file that under certain circumstances, the operator has the opportunity to earn an additional management fee. Mr. Speaker. This would be on top of the management fee they're earning for not moving the boat at all this summer, I guess, Mr. Speaker. My question for the Minister of Transportation. Can you tell this House what might possibly trigger an additional management fee to the operator?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member opposite for the question. The PC party's apparent opposition to this service grows with every setting of the House. In April of 2010, the tourism economy in this province was destabilized when the money was for that service was removed by the government of the day. And further, in 13 of that year, it was additionally destabilized when the ill-fated Novastar service was put in place by the government of the day. We are committed to stabilizing this service. We know that it is very important for the people of Nova Scotia and of Southwest Nova, and we are committed to having it sail.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, apparently the commitment was that it didn't need to sail at all 2019. That's not supporting the tourism industry. This entire government has let the tourism industry down. I didn't hear an answer on what the trigger might be. Now, it's entirely possible, because I've watched the minister's management of this file, it's entirely possible he just doesn't know. But he should know. $11.4 million in an operating subsidy for a ferry that isn't operating and probably won't operate at all this year. And that's just the subsidy as it stands today, without any additional management fee on top of that, which now we know the operator is somehow entitled to earn an additional management fee. This is the type of mismanagement that happens when the government takes their eyes off a file. Can the minister at least tell this House if the operator is eligible for any additional management fee this year, and if they have or will receive that additional fee?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, again, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has called into question the integrity of a minister, Mr. Speaker. I want to remind you again, I want to remind him again, he did this last week, Mr. Speaker. There were 1,985 FOIPOPs, only 63 that went back related to government, not the 562 that he said. And Mr. Speaker, I want you to check the record again, Mr. Speaker. Who in this House has been told they've misled the House and had to apologize, Mr. Speaker? It has not been the Minister of Transportation. It has been the Leader of the Official Opposition, Mr. Speaker. Just put it on the record, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Premier. Last week, Halifax Council released the proposal for a sports stadium in Shannon Park, submitted by Schooner Sports and Entertainment. One of the funding assumptions included in the report is payments from the Government of Nova Scotia in the range of $3 to $4 million per year for 30 years, or up to $120 million. Mr. Speaker, is this a cost the Premier is prepared to pay?
The Honourable The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, as she rightly corrected, Mr. Speaker, there's been a proposal put before HRM Council. They're reviewing that, Mr. Speaker. We as a government have also received that. I haven't seen the proposal myself. What I have been on the record is saying there will be no general revenue going into that sports stadium. What I did say, if there are other revenue sources, which I believe the report indicates there are a couple of others, potential possibilities, we would look at those in the totality of the economic footprint of what it might do.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier has said many times that he could create new revenue streams to support building a stadium. If there is new money to be found, the people of Dartmouth North need affordable housing, not a stadium. Between 2014 and 2017, rents in the HRM rose by 19%, outpacing any increase in incomes. The proposal provided to Halifax Council points out that a stadium could in fact make housing in that area more expensive. Mr. Speaker, will the Premier agree that it would be better to spend $120 million to help the 1 in 5 households in HRM who are struggling to pay the rent than on a stadium?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman for the question. Mr. Speaker, we continue year after year to spend money on affordable housing. We will continue to do so to make that investment. She would know, Mr. Speaker, we've continued to see employment opportunities, job creation, Mr. Speaker, for citizens across the province. Our unemployment rate is at an all-time low, Mr. Speaker. More young people are coming back into this province, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member is right on her position, Mr. Speaker, that we need to continue to invest in affordable housing. We need to continue to invest in health care. But, Mr. Speaker, we also need to drive the economy of this province and work with the private sector. So when we see an economic opportunity come to this province, it is the responsibility of the government, Mr. Speaker, if they're being asked to partner with that, to have an assessment of that and look at the overall economic footprint. The New Democratic Party is opposed to growing the footprint of the economic future of this province, Mr. Speaker. We saw what happened, Mr. Speaker, when they were in power. The economy got ignored. More people left, Mr. Speaker. What we're seeing now, unemployment going down. There's more people coming, Mr. Speaker. We're on the right track, and we'll look at all economic opportunities to provide opportunities.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Transportation, or I'll take the Premier, whichever one wants to give the same talking points. The Minister of Business has said that they have the best possible option for operating this ferry on the planet, the best operator on the planet. If I were a shareholder, I'd probably agree. $11.4 million and not one single customer. The ferry was slated to begin on June 21st, later postponed to July 7th, and then again to July 15th, and ultimately postponed maybe indefinitely. The government has said as recently as September 12th, though, that they're still hoping for at least one crossing. My question for the minister: how has Bay Ferries managed its crew? Have they been kept on standby, or have they been laid off?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member opposite for the question. The costs associated with maintaining the service are baked into the arrangements that we have with the company in terms of how the service operates. As it's been made public at public accounts, all the expenditures associated with this service are made available to the public through that process, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, obviously there's a lot of costs baked into this. The boat hasn't moved once, and it's $11.4 million. We have to go to court to figure out exactly how much is baked into that cake, Mr. Speaker. But I believe the ferry has made possibly one empty run to Bar Harbor. But we've previously learned that the crew of the CAT is, by law, an entirely American crew. The ferry has been in Yarmouth for virtually the entire not sailing season. With an American-based crew and a ship in Canada, one is left to wonder, where were these crew members staying the entire time? I'd like to ask the minister, can the minister clarify for this House whether the crew has been staying in Yarmouth or whether Bay Ferries has been flying them back and forth?
The Honourable Premier.
Again, Mr. Speaker, in the Leader of the Conservative Party's preamble, he said you had to go to court to find that information. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, every penny that has been spent on the Yarmouth to Bar Harbor ferry, Mr. Speaker, has been documented for the public to see, Mr. Speaker. That is misleading the House, Mr. Speaker, once again. What he's talking about, Mr. Speaker, let's be clear, is the Conservative Party taking a private company to court to find their management team to destabilize their competitive place in a global marketplace, Mr. Speaker. That's what he's talking about, Mr. Speaker. But every dime that has been spent on that service, Mr. Speaker, has been made public in public accounts to the people of Nova Scotia, not as the leader just described it, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, at some point the government's going to have to look in the mirror on this particular file and take some accountability and accept some responsibility for an entire sailing season missed at the cost of $20 million. Documents disclosed in a FOIPOP indicate that someone, may have been the operator, may have been the government, because it was redacted, we couldn't tell, someone asked for an extension of the option to return to Portland. And despite having been in contact with Bar Harbor from as early as June 2018, Bay Ferries was still asking Portland as late as January 2019 if they could go back. Obviously, it was clear in January that the ball was being dropped in Bar Harbor, and they knew that since June before. My question for the minister is, clearly things had not progressed between June 2018 and January 19. Why did he ever believe that there was any chance for the boat to sail this season?
The Honourable Premier.
So, Mr. Speaker, again, the Leader of the Conservative Party is making a big assumption. At the beginning of his question, he said he didn't know, and then he relayed that comment to Bay Ferries. The answer to the question is he doesn't know, Mr. Speaker. He's making a big stretch, Mr. Speaker. Again, let's be accurate if he's going to ask questions in the House of Assembly.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
A little bit of accuracy in the answers would go a long way, Mr. Speaker. Somebody redacted it. Somebody knew in June and in January and in November in between that there was a big, big problem with Bar Harbor. And this government likes to push that failure on everybody but themselves, Mr. Speaker. Certainly not on the best possible operator on the planet. They can't be responsible for anything. First, it was the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. Then it was Donald Trump's shutdown. Then it was Portland because they wouldn't let them back in. Lots of blame being pointed all around, Mr. Speaker. But the reality is the 2019 season was in jeopardy as early as June 2018, and the extension requests to Portland are evidence of that. My question for the Minister of Transportation, can you tell this House who is actually responsible for an entire missed sailing season?
The Honourable Premier.
And, Mr. Speaker, for accuracy, Mr. Speaker, that ferry was never returned to Portland, Mr. Speaker. The reality of it is, Mr. Speaker, there were changes when it came to border security on both borders, Mr. Speaker, the one in the southern tip of the U.S., Mr. Speaker, and the northern border related to us. It impacted Portland, Mr. Speaker. They did not want that ferry service into Portland, Mr. Speaker. They were clear about that. We've entered into a relationship with Bar Harbor, Mr. Speaker, but let's be accurate, Mr. Speaker. Let's make sure when the honourable member stands up, he at least tries to put the facts on the table, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Pretty rich, Mr. Speaker. Pretty rich. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get any kind of an answer from this government on the ferry file. The minister and the premier seem only interested in parroting the talking points that they think will get them out of a jam at that particular moment. There's little indication of any meaningful oversight on this file. I can't see that anyone is overseeing this file, Mr. Speaker. My question for the minister. When Bay Ferries came to him on June 7th and said they were cancelling reservations up to July 7th, did the minister ask for a detailed project plan or any information that would give him comfort that the season would in fact start on July 7th?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure my learned colleague on the other side, with his training, would understand that, of course, intensive financial analysis are being done constantly around this file. And all aspects of the service are being analyzed. And the only thing that's been constant throughout this debate over the last number of years has been the opposition to this service and to the people of Southwest Nova by the party opposite. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, despite the intense analysis that was, of course, being done by this government, just 2 weeks later, the plan went off the rails yet again. And the government came back and said, the operator came back, the government agreed, whatever the case may be, wasn't going to be July 7th. It was then being pushed to July 18th. So my question for the minister is, despite the obvious intensive analysis that was done just 2 weeks before, when the operator came back yet again and said there's yet another delay, did the minister ask for any information that would give him comfort that this time it might actually sail on July 18th as he was being instructed? Any analysis that time?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Yes.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's sad, because yet a week later, yet again, the sailing season was postponed, this time indefinitely. 3 times in a row. And this government said, despite their intense analysis, continued to be delayed. It's not good enough, Mr. Speaker. $20 million of taxpayer money, it is not good enough. If the minister would have asked the correct questions way back in early July when the first postponement was coming, tourism operators might have had a chance as they looked at their season, whether to staff up. They might have had some insight as to where this was going. So my question for the minister is, when was the last time the minister actually went to Bar Harbor to see how much left is work on the Bar Harbor terminal building?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have officials at Bar Harbor continuously. We have a consultant, a third-party consultant that has been hired throughout the whole process to monitor the project as it has moved forward. And we have complete faith in Bay Ferries, their ability to manage that file and to create the sustainable service that is going to serve Nova Scotia for decades into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions for
the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. It's becoming increasingly agitating to listen to the responses from this government on this file. On the one hand, there's a $1.75 million announcement on the eve of a by-election. 4 cabinet ministers show up. On the other hand, we have $20 million of taxpayer money, and nobody is going down to check on it. The minister's looking at video. $11.4 million subsidy for the season, nothing to show for it, not one passenger, not one room night sold, not one Nova Scotian job. It's an utter failure to manage this file. I'd like to ask the Premier, does the Premier think his minister has done an adequate job in safeguarding $20 million of public money?
The Honourable Premier.
Speaker, again, Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member asks a question, Mr. Speaker should listen to the answer. The Minister of Transportation has just said we've had officials down there, Mr. Speaker. The Deputy Minister's down there. We've had other members of our TIR staff who've been down there, Mr. Speaker, multiple times to look at this project as we continue to see this project go forward. I understand the question might have been written to him before he started to ask it, Mr. Speaker, but the reality is he should listen if he wants to the answer that is provided.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the minister responsible for housing. In my office, I have heard from people who have faced rent increases large enough to force them to move, only to learn afterwards that the landlord has turned their old home into a more profitable Airbnb. I hear from people looking for housing who are considering exorbitantly priced basement apartments in neighborhoods where they have never considered living before because Airbnbs have eaten into the residential rental stock. And in conversations with municipal leaders across the province, I've heard that tourism workers are having a hard time finding a place to live. It's clear to me that we have waited too long to regulate. Mr. Speaker, when will this government regulate short-term rentals and return some much-needed fairness to the housing market in Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Nova Scotia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, this government believes that every Nova Scotia deserves a safe and affordable place to call home. Mr. Speaker, as the member may be aware, and all members of this House, we just signed a national housing strategy off in August that's worth more than $400 million in the next decade to this province, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to invest in a variety of ways to meet the housing needs of all Nova Scotians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Mr. Speaker, none of those units through that national housing agreement are going to make a difference for families looking for housing now in our communities. Nova Scotians are in a housing crisis. Across the province, short-term rentals are one factor that has reduced the rental housing stock available for residents, for families, for our constituents. We need strong regulations to curb this impact on our communities so that Nova Scotians are still able to find a place to live that they can afford. Mr. Speaker, can the minister tell Nova Scotians how the impending regulations will bring properties back into the long-term rental market?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Nova Scotia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The National Housing Strategy will indeed have a large impact on where we are going into the future. More than $400 million being invested. This year, the action plan alone, $88 million being invested between the two levels of government, with an additional $70 million being invested by the province alone. This will help more than 5,500 households in Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker. Last year, more than 500 new rent supplements were assigned to individuals. We'll be talking about more of those in the coming years, and we'll be doing all we can to assist those right across this province looking for housing, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Argyle-Barrington.
Mr. Speaker, during the recent by-election in Argyle-Barrington, the Liberal candidate was adamant that in stating only this government could protect tourism in the Yarmouth and Acadian Shores area. But we learned last week that they might need to work a little bit harder in protecting tourism providers. In July, licensed room nights sold in the area were down 29% over July 2018, compared to an overall provincial decline of 1%. And year-to-date room nights in the area to the end of July 2019 were down 22% compared to the provincial decline of 2%. My question for the Minister of Transportation: why are business operators in Yarmouth County and Shelburne County being left to shoulder the fallout of this government's mismanagement?
The Honourable Minister of Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. Obviously, the impact of the Yarmouth to Bar Harbour to Portland Ferry has had significant effect on the operators down in the South Shore, and quite frankly, all regions of all Nova Scotia, including Cape Breton, Mr. Speaker. This is why, from day one, from the beginning, we fought for the ferry before we were in government. We fought to correct what happened with the Nova Star and the mess that made. We do have the best operator. We've worked tirelessly to get the best agreement, the best possible situation. What's happened is certainly regrettable, Mr. Speaker. We want the ferry to be running. Jump with us, get in line, and let's make sure that ferry has a great season in 2020.
The Honourable Member for Argyle-Barrington.
Mr. Speaker, in July, the Tri-County Vanguard ran an article with the headline, and I quote, "Ferry delay impacting Yarmouth tourism stakeholders heavily." In it, the owner of the Lake Lawn B&B and Motel in Yarmouth stated 80% of his business had been cancelled through the early July. The owner of the Best Western in Yarmouth called the impact of the lost ferry, and I quote, "devastating." The owner of McKinnon Inn said the situation was, and I quote, "depressing," and that the inn was forced to refund multiple cancelled reservations. And I will table all of this for the government side, the self-appointed sole protectors of tourism in Yarmouth. So my question again is, can these operators expect some support, or is the ferry the only business that isn't allowed to lose money?
The Honourable Minister of Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. Without question, without a second of hesitation, I'm very proud of our economic record for rebuilding the economy of Nova Scotia here. I know that this is a serious question for the member, and it is for all members of this legislature. We know that tourism is an economic pillar for this province, Mr. Speaker. That's why we've invested more than any government and are leading the Federation in the work for direct flights. That's why we invest directly in tourism icons, Mr. Speaker. That's why we've supported Tourism Nova Scotia through robust marketing, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we will continue to support a strong Yarmouth Ferry service, because when that service goes, it impacts positively all tourism operators in Nova Scotia. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last fall, we asked this government if a new nicotine vaping product sweeping the United States was available here in Nova Scotia. The Minister of Justice indicated he wasn't sure, but that he would work with the Minister of Health and Wellness to review the issue and determine the availability of such products in Nova Scotia, and I'll table that. As concerns have grown in recent months over the long-term effects of vaping, I'd like to follow up and ask the Minister of Health what conclusions of nicotine vaping devices were drawn from the sit-down meeting between him and his colleague.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for the question. Of course, both the department, I believe all members in the legislature obviously have concerns with both smoking rates and the rise of vaping or e-cigarette use. In particular, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to our youth population, we certainly know of concerns being raised about youth rates of smoking. We've seen this. I have the Office of Medical Health, the Chief Medical Health Officer, continues to evaluate and monitor to provide advice and recommendations, Mr. Speaker, about any future changes with respect to these products.
The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer, although I don't think they met, actually, which concerns me. But as the Minister would know, Health Canada issued an advisory on the weekend that warned Canadians on vaping products to monitor their symptoms for pulmonary illness. This comes in the wake of increased media reports on severe pulmonary illness and even death related with vaping in the United States. This month, vaping-related hospitalizations were confirmed in Ontario, BC, Quebec, and with other cases under review, and I'll table that document. Yet when we raised this issue a year ago, there was little concern or awareness. So does the Minister now agree that this province is absolutely not immune to the growing vaping-related health problems we're seeing in other jurisdictions?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for bringing this topic to the floor. Indeed, a topic of interest and concern, not just for us on the floor of the legislature, but I believe for Nova Scotians more broadly. Mr. Speaker, of course, the health concerns and these reports about respiratory illnesses that are occurring and being reported and investigated both throughout the United States and more recently a few cases here in Canada. I can assure the member that we do take this very seriously. Collectively as a government, I can table this document, Mr. Speaker. My colleague, the Minister of Finance, also engaging with public health nationally in terms of where their positioning is on regulation and changes in regulation. Mr. Speaker, through the department, the Public Health Office, they've engaged both their national partners, but also, Mr. Speaker, engaging frontline healthcare professionals, providing advice and recommendation on how to monitor, as well as reports, so we can get an appreciation, understanding for what, if any, health impacts and respiratory illnesses being derived in our province. So that work is ongoing.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Education. The Lung Association of Nova Scotia reports that 37% of our youth in grades 7 through 12 have tried an e-cigarette at least once. That's a rate 61% higher than the same rate among all Canadian students in the same grade range, and I'll table that, Mr. Speaker. A review of the Twitter account for the department returns not a single instance of the terms vape, vaping, or e-cigarette. And the extent of advocacy on the matter from the largest regional education centre in the province seems to be a two-page handout sheet distributed to parents. And I'll table that as well, Mr. Speaker. My question is this. Does the minister feel that a handout sheet is a sufficient tool to discourage students from trying vaping products? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As the member would know, vaping is not allowed on school property. It is punishable, including consequences up to suspension. We inform our students through our healthy curriculum on the dangers of vaping, and we update that curriculum to make sure that all the information is accurate. This year, we did reach out to parents as well to enhance the effort that we're doing to inform our students of the dangers of vaping, so that students can not just have a conversation about this important situation in school, but also at home with their parents.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Mr. Speaker, the minister claims that the curriculum is helping students make healthy decisions about vaping. but a conversation with any of our principals will tell you that this is an ongoing problem at our schools and that clearly there's a disconnect. The outcomes that we have about vaping are clearly not helping some of our youth make healthy choices. Medical professionals continuously warn us that we do not know the long-term effects of vaping. And that's part of what's so concerning about these high rates of experimentation with the devices among youth. We know pneumonia-like symptoms have been reported among heavy vape users, and manufacturers can freely advertise fun flavors that attract young customers. Now, when we previously asked the minister about this question, the question was brushed aside. My question now is this: will the minister admit that the department's response at this point is not sufficient in the face of a growing danger to young Nova Scotians?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This question has never been brushed aside. This is a critical question for the Department of Education, for the Department of Health, and indeed the entire government. We want our citizens, our students, to know the dangers of vaping. That's why in education we ensure that it's in our curriculum. We train our teachers on this very issue, and we're also bringing in parents to have a conversation here. The best thing we can do in our education system, Mr. Speaker, is empower our students to make decisions for themselves. We can't control their decisions, but we have to be able to educate them so they can make the best decisions for their lives and their bodies. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Beaverbank.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the physiotherapy department at the Cobequid Health Centre currently has the largest wait list in the province, numbering 771. This physiotherapy department has a catchment area that serves the area of Uniacke, Stewiacke, Clayton Park, Rockingham, and of course Sackville. It receives between 125 and 150 new referrals a month and has only 4 physiotherapists on staff to handle this new wait list. It's my understanding, Mr. Speaker, that in comparison, the Memorial Building in Halifax sees less referral volume but has twice the physiotherapists on staff to handle their volume. Mr. Speaker, my question to the minister is, will the minister commit to either hiring or reassigning additional physiotherapists to Cobequid to better address the growing wait list?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the member's question. I think it's important to recognize the investments that we've made as a government towards improving access to care, in particular, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to both pre- and post-rehabilitation, Mr. Speaker, for those in particular with joint issues and requiring a surgery. Mr. Speaker, the orthopedic strategy and the investments we've made there have seen an expansion of clinic supports and investments, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that people are prepared, have better outcomes based upon those services, requiring less time in those rehabilitative services after their surgeries, Mr. Speaker. So we continue to invest, looking at and evaluating the entire system, Mr. Speaker, of delivering this type of care for all Nova Scotians in need.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Beaverbank.
Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that new referrals received by Cobequid Physiotherapy Department are all assigned a category depending on the patient's needs. Urgent is within 7 days, P1 is within 2 to 3 weeks, or 1 to 2 weeks. A P2 could be between 2 and 4 weeks, and generally it would probably be about 4 to 8 weeks. However, we're told by a constituent who was provided the classification of a P2 due to her chronic pain, but it's now been over 2 years, not 2 to 4 weeks. The Cobequid Health Centre has informed them that it could be another 2 years yet until they get in. Why is it that the department can't adhere to its own classification policy instead of making people wait for months and years?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the member's concern, particularly being brought forward on behalf of a constituent. A few things to address in the question. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, it's not the department's policy or rating structure, Mr. Speaker. It's part of the Nova Scotia Health Authority, Mr. Speaker. That's the operational arm that delivers the health care services in our communities across the province. So, Mr. Speaker, the Health Authority works to ensure that the health care services in our hospital and in our communities throughout the province are being delivered. Mr. Speaker, what I would encourage the member, if he has a specific constituent with those concerns, if he's raised with the local site, he can certainly reach out to the Health Authority as patient advocates available to help navigate the system, provide clarity. And Mr. Speaker, if that doesn't provide appropriate resolution, he can certainly bring up the conversation with me as well.
The honourable member for Cape Breton Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week we saw an emergency debate on climate change in this House, and also in April of 2019 we saw the royal assent of the Coastal Protection Act. And the Act is supposed to be for preventing the development and activity in certain locations adjacent to the coast. What I'm really concerned about, Mr. Speaker, is the actual development that already exists there, and in particular public infrastructure in the way of roads and bridges. I would like to ask the Minister of the Environment what role does his department play and that he plays in putting together a plan to make certain that our coastal infrastructure that's publicly owned is protected in the years to come.
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for my questions here today. We first want to really recognize the fact that Nova Scotians, certainly we're leaders in climate change and the work that we're doing, not only to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but this work that she's mentioned in coastal protection is an extremely important part of it in mitigating those effects that are coming. Yes, it is an emergency. We recognize that. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing collectively with the Department of Municipal Affairs and building the regulations around what that Act actually will touch on. And in the future, as we roll those regulations out, certainly we'll be able to provide that information from what we hear from Nova Scotians and what's important to them. And again, that certain important part that we have in protecting Nova Scotia, which is in fact itself an island. Thank you.
The honourable member for Cape Breton Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to redirect my supplementary to the Minister for TIR. I already have an emergency, I can assure you, in my constituency, and I'm sure that I am not the only one that has, in any time that we have a storm like the hurricane that we just had, we have breakwaters that should be protecting our roadways, which are provincially owned. They are obviously a federal responsibility, but at the end of the day, if they're not kept in good working order, it affects the coastal roadways, and we have several situations in my constituency where roads are actually at risk of washing away with a storm surge. Can I ask the Minister, please, what plan does he have in place in order to protect our transportation infrastructure as climate change obviously is becoming more and more of an emergency situation?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I really appreciate the question. Thank the member opposite for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to publicly thank all the 2,200 employees of TIR who worked diligently providing relief during Dorian. I've received emails from across the province thanking the department for the selfless work that was done during that during the hurricane. I really want to thank our staff for doing that. In terms of protecting our coastal resources and highways, that is something that we do constantly. And also, as a member might know, municipalities are responsible for having EMO plans for protecting their coastal areas. Thank you.
The Honourable House Leader for the Official Opposition.
Speaker, a question for the Minister of Finance. Refer to the letter that the Minister of Health just tabled with respect to vaping. The question for the Minister of Finance, does this suggest that the government is in fact concerned with the revenue impact of the future sale of cannabis vaping products, given the federal government in October of this year will be regulating that marketplace?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member opposite, that it couldn't be further from the truth. We've said here in this House that our main concern is the safety of youth and children, and we continue to be... We continue to be driven by that. The request to the Minister of Health, the Federal Minister of Health, was guidelines because we will be, through NSLC, the retailer when other products come online. And we wanted to raise the concern that is there both globally and locally with the health hazards of vaping. And that's the intent of the question, and it was direction from the Minister.
The Honourable House Leader for the official opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the first thing I would say, if this government is concerned about the health impacts, why didn't the letter come from the Minister of Health? The other point would be, if we look at the letter, there's no specific reference made to health. There is some concern about consumption of cannabis through vaping. But, Mr. Speaker, it appears that the government is more interested in wanting to know if they can buy something so that then retailers can resell it.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are 3 departments that work together closely on this side of the House with respect to cannabis and cannabis products, Justice, Health, and Finance. It is the Federal Minister of Health. It is Health Canada that set the guidelines for what products will be approved, but as the retailer in this province and as the person responsible for NSLC, it's important that I know what products will be approved for retail.
The Honourable Member for Colchester-Musqueam Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Transportation. The Moose River Road in my constituency has been a hazardous road now for a good many years to drive on. With the mine going in Moose River, of course, this road was slated for repairs in 2018 and to be completed in 2019. I know I have checked many times this summer on the progress of the road, and I haven't seen any change from last year to this year. I've tried to ask why. One of the reasons suggested was that the tender went in late. If that's the case, could the minister explain to me that so that I can then explain to my constituents what happened?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the member drawing attention to us tendering the longest continuous piece of paving that we have tendered this year in the province at 17 kilometres, all of which is in the member's constituency. You can rest assured that the contract has been awarded, and I believe the work started yesterday.
Thank you very much. The time allotted for oral questions put by members to ministers has expired. We'll now move on to government business. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call public bills for second reading?
We'll now call public bills for second reading.
Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill number 152, the Plastic Bags Reduction Act?
We'll now call Bill number 152, the Plastic Bags Reduction Act. The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that Bill 152, an act to reduce plastic bags, be now read a second time. Mr. Speaker, it's very appropriate that we're having this conversation now, just days after Friday's remarkable strike for climate action. Around the world, people are talking about climate action. They're talking about our environment and the need to protect it. They're telling us that this is a global emergency and they're demanding action. Mr. Speaker, we agree. Nova Scotians are leaders in reducing waste. We send 423 kilograms per year per capita to landfills. That's just about half the national average. Nova Scotians work hard to recycle. We have a successful recycling program for beverages and containers and electronics. We recycle paint in Enviro depots and compact fluorescent bulbs. This bill, Mr. Speaker, helps us move forward another step. It will ban single-use plastic checkout bags in retail outlets across the province, and it allows us to look at other single-use items in the future. Mr. Speaker, this will change the way we shop every day and the way we think when we go to the grocery store. It will reduce the amount of plastic in our landfills. It will also reduce litter in our waterways and our environment. There will be exceptions for dry cleaning bags, for bulk items, and for food safety. We know businesses need time to prepare for it. If passed, this act will give them a year. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is one of the actions we're taking to protect the environment. It will allow us to continue the very important conversations Nova Scotians are having about more to protect the earth, wasting less and moving forward. I look forward to hearing the comments from my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sackville-Beaverbank.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our caucus is very glad to see that that the government's bringing forward legislation to look at banning single-use plastic bags. In fact, I remember last sitting, our leader actually asked the minister at the time if it was something that the government was looking at, and at that time was told no, they weren't. So we certainly are glad to see that they've had a change of mind and that they've come back now bringing this legislation forward. Ironically, we actually had a piece of legislation as well that was drafted that we were going to table on the floor the exact same day. However, the government brought theirs forward and ours somewhat became mute, so we withdrew that. Mr. Speaker, although I do like this, I have some general comments I want to make. I do want to recognize and thank the government for listening to what municipalities across this province and myself as well have echoed time and again, which is trying to create uniformity across the province. This bill does that instead of having a mishmash quilt work of bylaws that each municipality has across the province and how to deal with single-source plastic bags. Now at least all municipalities will be on an equal playing field, all businesses across this province, and I think that this is certainly the best way to go for the consumer, the municipalities, and the province as a whole. Where I do have some concerns is the long-term look. I know that at one point in time the minister had suggested that or had mentioned that this bill relied heavily on legislation that was passed I think in July in PEI, and when we looked at drafting our legislation our bill we were going to bring forward, we also relied on the PEI bill and legislation in drafting that. And I note that there's a number of differences between PEI and what we were hoping to bring forward and what this current legislation, what this current bill brings forward in it. So I did want to talk about a few of those. One is, although this does unify municipalities across the province, in the long-term goal of unifying the Atlantic provinces, this will set Nova Scotia separately from PEI. And I know that there was a goal and discussion by a number of different people at different provinces that the hope was, and with the business associations, was that there would be uniformity within the Atlantic provinces, so regardless of where you went, there'd be uniformity there too. So I do criticize that that it isn't more in line with PEI's legislation. And to be more direct on that, one of the issues that I have is that the PEI legislation, Mr. Speaker, although it does allow alternates to single-source plastic bags such as paper, it does require residents or consumers to actually pay a small fee for those paper costs or for that paper bag. And I think that the justification for that is so that businesses are not just handing out paper bags in lieu and trying to, try to actually encourage people to use recyclable cloth or recyclable plastic bags instead of single-use or paper. And it has been shown, Mr. Speaker, in numerous studies, particularly done in Ottawa, that paper actually fills up a landfill quite a bit faster than plastic does. So I would suggest that as we move forward in this, there is a very interesting website. It's called allaboutbags.ca, and it does break down a lot of the legislations and explains why paper's not necessarily the way to go either. I mean, it takes 4 times the water to create a paper bag as it does to create a plastic bag. So the PEI legislation, what it did was it actually put in a small fee on the paper bag. So it's still provided the consumer who may have forgot their recyclable bag an opportunity to have a bag, but at the same time, it restricted businesses just giving out numerous paper bags in lieu of plastic. And I don't think as a province what we want to do is to shift people from plastic to paper. I remember back in the, I guess, 70s, 80s, we went from paper to plastic. So we don't want to shift people back to paper. What we want to do is encourage and provide incentives to people to move towards recyclable, reusable bags, whether those be cloth or plastic. So that's one concern that or the second concern I really had with this legislation. So the ununiformity against the Atlantic provinces and no charges for those bags, or for those paper bags. So having said that, I do, as I said, I do appreciate this coming forward. I'm sure that we will have numerous people coming out to law amendments to talk about it, and I look forward to what they say. I am very optimistic when I hear the minister saying that that he views this legislation as a first step in looking at banning and a way to deal with single-use plastics. You know, unfortunately, it doesn't address straws or Tim Hortons or other type of cup lids. It doesn't address water bottles, which you know are certainly single use, and a number of other items as well. So hopefully this will be the first step, and within the next months or years we will see a bill or amendments coming back here that will address some of those single-use plastics as well. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll sit down, and once again I certainly look forward to seeing and listening to what the public has to say in regards to this at law amendments. So thank you.
The member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'll just say a few brief things at this juncture of second reading to say that, you know, we welcome this legislation. Indeed, we were calling for something and in fact brought forward something quite similar ourselves earlier. I want to take this opportunity to highlight leadership coming from various quarters around the province. I think of the Fresh Mart in Inverness, Ingonish, the Fresh Mart in Ingonish, where I shopped this summer when I was in Cape Breton, where not only do they not use grocery bags, they actually have someone who will help you carry out your groceries in a bin to the trunk of your car, or put it in the back of your truck or whatever, what have you. So there are no grocery bags there. I think of the municipal leaders across Nova Scotia who have been calling for a province-wide or even a region-wide approach, recognizing that, in fact, that has also been called for by the Retail Council, and that the Retail Council was welcoming and actually asking the province to take this sort of step. Sometimes in this business I lose track of the timing of things, but I know that it was certainly very evident in the last session, which was last winter. So I think you know, we welcome this, and we, as often is the case, we wish that work had happened a little bit sooner, but we'll certainly work with the government now. I'll say that at the level of my own constituency, I chose to work with Prescott Group, which is a social enterprise in Halifax Needham that works with people with intellectual disabilities, and they actually made for me some 900 beautiful canvas bags that can carry a ton of stuff, and you can throw them in the wash and you can fold them up and throw them in your backpack or in your purse. And I've enjoyed and been glad to give those out to residents, and at the same time, I feel like in my household, and maybe it's because I think I'll blame the kids. I'll definitely blame the kids. Every time they do anything, if they run a race, if they get school supplies, if they participate in a camp, they come home with another bag. So I think we actually have to be looking at it on a broader level of how can we how can we just really try to reduce the amount of weight that we're putting on the planet's resources and try to organize ourselves to live well without always needing another bag, whether it be plastic or whether it be one that is being pushed at us through some sort of swag, prize package, what have you. I'll also note that really grocery stores need to take some more responsibility. I choose where I shop to some extent based on packaging, because I get so frustrated in certain grocery stores where you can find beautiful fresh vegetables wrapped in shrink wrap plastic on styrofoam trays. So, I mean, it's all great to reduce the amount of plastic at the checkout, but there's a whole lot of other places where all of our institutions, including retailers, need to innovate and ensure that we are addressing the whole of the problem, which is not just the grocery bags at the checkout counter. So with those few words, I'll take my seat, and we'll look forward to hearing from residents of Nova Scotia and hopefully some municipalities as well at law amendments. Thank you very much.
The motion, if I am to, actually 1 second here. If I'm to recognize the ministers to close debate on oh, okay. The member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to make a few comments. One of the things that the Minister of Environment has said is that Nova Scotians are already leaders in protecting the environment. And I agree in many ways, but I want to do a tiny bit of a history lesson. About 25 years ago, give or take a year, we had Camp Hill Hospital, and we had such severe environmental issues with that hospital that over 600 employees were poisoned, many of whom never recovered their health and never went back to work. And it was the people of Nova Scotia who fought to get the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre built out in Fall River, Nova Scotia. And I forget the exact day that it opened, but when it first opened, it had a 4-year wait to get in, and then as time went on, it got better. Almost immediately after the Environmental Health Centre was opened, the budget, I think, was around 1.1 or 1.2 million. The very next year, the budget was starting to be cut. And over the years, as we became better at promoting scent-free products and scent-free workplaces, there was a fear in the community that the Environmental Health Centre would eventually be shut down. And people were like, oh, that can't possibly be true because we're all committed to the environment. Well, I was part of the staff at the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre when we amalgamated with the Nova Scotia Health Authority. And so the fears, again, that the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre was going to be shut down at some point or lose its funding continued to grow. And what has happened under this government is the Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre, which was the only environmental health centre in the Maritimes that I'm aware of, which saw patients come here from across the country, changed its name from Nova Scotia Environmental Health Centre to Integrated Chronic Care Services. Now, that might not seem like a big deal to some, but to those who have been poisoned by the environment, it's a very big deal because it took the focus off of those who have already been made sick by the environment. So although we can't ask questions today, I'm having a little trouble finding out how much funding there is for this integrated chronic care services and how much of that funding is actually going towards those who have environmental induced illness. So this particular act, Bill 152, the Plastic Bags Reduction Act, for anybody who's been made sick by the environment, they will see this as a good thing because you have to produce these bags and then you have to dispose of them. One of the things that this act does not do, though, is specify how well the enforcement's going to go. So for a neighbor of mine, Ernie Arsenault, who owns Smitty's in Dartmouth and who has his home right across the street from my constituency office, every day he's out picking up Tim Hortons cups and other single-use plastics. And it's a large part of the garbage that he picks up on a daily basis. So littering is already regulated, and the people in my constituency have taken it upon themselves to go around our beaches and boardwalks and roadways to pick up litter, because we can't get garbage bins on our public beaches and walkways that would give somebody a place to put something. So now we're taking away a plastic bag, which I fully support, but the enforcement of this is not really outlined here, and we didn't hear it mentioned. I'm assuming it's going to fall upon the municipality to do that. So is there increased funding from the province to the municipalities to now enforce another bill? Because once it's passed, somebody's got to enforce the regulations. The other concern I have, because we weren't given very many details, is what the regulations will actually be. And for those who are unaware of how things work in the House, you can bring in an act without bringing in the regulations, which really means that an awful lot can be decided behind the scenes without any debate here in the legislature. And one of the words that's always used in these acts is the governor and council may make regulations with respect to, and then there's a list of A to L as to what they might do. It would have been nice to have some regulations that we could debate here, because there's going to be a cost associated with those regulations. The last thing I want to point out, and is purely from a physiotherapy perspective that I do this, is in the olden days we were all buying green boxes to put food to bring home from the grocery store. And the reason we're not using those so much now is because we have an aging population and those boxes are heavy. And there are a lot of people who take the bus to and from the grocery store. So the green boxes were a great idea and people were buying them. I had many, and then they didn't seem to work. We also then brought in the large plastic bags that the grocery stores produced, but they are very heavy if you're a senior or if you have mobility issues. We also brought in cloth bags, and if you ever read the research on cloth bags, I forget the right word, but the leftover from the food can contaminate those bags, and that's a challenge, and we didn't talk about that. So when we talk about we're not going to do something, we have to talk about what are we going to do instead, because that's what people want to know. Well, if you're taking this away as an option, what's the best option moving forward? And I didn't hear anything about that in the introduction. So I'm hoping that these are just some things that you might consider discussing. I'm assuming some of them will come up during law amendments, and I'll look forward to hearing the remarks when they do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a few comments on Bill 152, the Plastic Bags Reduction Act. For some of us in this chamber that were present at the climate strike on Friday, I mean, that was arguably the largest protest I've been a part of since 1995, when I was part of the Unity Rally in Montreal, where there were 500,000 people that participated in that rally. As a matter of fact, I've been told, in terms of the estimates in Montreal, there were close to 500,000 people at that protest as well. Everyone in this chamber knows the environment and climate change is a top priority to Nova Scotians and Canadians. It's extremely important to young Nova Scotians. For many years at my high school in Dartmouth East, I taught the Global Geography 12 class, and many students often refer to that class as the climate change class. And for, I think, our young Nova Scotians, this is their key issue, as it is for many Nova Scotians. And you know, this bill has often been said that this is a good first step. I absolutely agree. And I think what you'll find with this bill is a lot of consensus throughout the province of us moving forward in banning the plastic bags. What struck me at the protest on Friday was just the level of care people have for the environment, the level of urgency that exists for governments to take, and elected officials to take action on climate change. And certainly, I think with Bill 152, we're seeing that first step. So certainly, just to echo, the comments from my colleague from Sackville-Beaverbank, one of the great strengths of this bill is that you're going to have uniformity across the municipalities, which I think, businesses in our province, they want to see this to be successful, and having that uniformity will only assist with that. So this definitely is a good first step. This is an issue I believe you're going to find a large consensus with Nova Scotians, because it's an issue people care so deeply about. And, I recall the Minister of Environment talking about, him growing up in Southwest Nova, and just, how important it is for a young person to have that pristine environment to be able to interact with. It's so critical for the development of our youth. So just as my other colleagues in this House have indicated, I know we all look forward to Nova Scotians coming to law amendments and having their say on Bill 152, a really good first step for environmental policy here in Nova Scotia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If I'm to recognize the minister, it is to close debate on Bill number 152, the Plastic Bag Reduction Act.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd certainly like to thank the members from Halifax, for Halifax, Needham, Sackville, Beaverbank, Cole Harbour, Eastern Passage, and Dartmouth East for their comments. I'll just offer a few things on myself. Firstly, it is equally important. I heard from a lot that consistency across jurisdictions is met, and I will say that we've engaged with the retail sector, and certainly that's what we've heard from them. I'd like to assure them that what we have in our bill does certainly reflect consistency. There is some discussion, I guess, that we could say around the fees, and we did have that discussion ourselves also, and we made a conscious decision to allow those fees to be borne by the retailer, which would give them the ability to keep that consistency, continuity that they have across the regions. I'd also like to offer up the understanding for everybody in the House that PEI is currently reviewing those parts of their legislation as we speak. And one of the areas that they're looking at is the fee structure. So whether they adopt what we have or not, I'm not sure. But we just wanted to build on what they had there and keep that continuity. Also, it certainly is important. I'd heard the word enforcement and concerns about that. All the enforcement work for this is going to be borne within our department, within the staff that we have here. I think one of the most important things that we have to move forward with enforcement is education, and that's another benefit, I think, of this bill that we need to always keep our eye on. This has raised the conversation around plastics in our environment. It's raised the effects that plastic has on things like marine life. I mean, humpback turtles, or leatherback turtles, for example, actually die from plastic bags. We have concerns with litter that we've heard on the sides of the road and plastic there. Certainly, those things are key, and we always need to keep our eye on the concerns that plastic have in our landfills. We need to do better there. So in moving forward with this, I'm encouraged to hear the comments from my colleagues there. I look forward to hearing what is brought forward at law amendments, and with that, I would move closing a debate on second reading of Bill number
152.
172.
152.
152.
The motion is for second reading of Bill number 152, the Plastic Bag Reduction Act. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Contrary minded, nay. The motion is carried.
Bill number 152, an act to reduce the use of plastic bags and other single-use products.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. I recognize the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call Bill number 160, the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act?
Bill number 160, the Fishery and Coastal Resource Act. I recognize the Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's with great pleasure I rise today to move second reading of Bill number 160, an Act amend Chapter 25 of the Act of 1996, the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act. Nova Scotia's fishing industry continues to grow and is one of the province's most important exports. And indeed, when you combine the employment in the fisheries and aquaculture industry in Nova Scotia, we employ over 18,000 people, along with many more supporting jobs from other industries. Over the past 4 years, we've been Canada's number one exporter of seafood. We export in excess of $2 billion a year, and the thanks goes to the hardworking industry that's made that happen. Our goal is to have the best quality seafood in the world, that we can continue to grow the value of our exports and build a secure economic future for rural and coastal communities in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia seafood products are known all over the world for their quality, and we want to make sure our regulations support the industry's success. This bill supports the first stage of designing a revised regulatory framework for licensing fish buying and processing in Nova Scotia and modernize that industry to align with international standards. The industry is faced with many challenges: automation, new international standards, new food safety requirements, traceability, and the list goes on and on. The second part of this bill deals with the process of the Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board. The Loan Board has been modernized at the request of the industry to ensure that we have faster turnaround time, better standards, and easier access to loans for the board, while at the same time ensuring that the industry and the people in the industry are providing with a good source of income based on loans they get, and a great opportunity for young people to get in the industry. The second part, or the first part of this thing, will designate signing authority to officials within the department to speed the processing of activities instead of having to go through a long process that is in place today. Also, they will remove the requirement for the Minister of Fisheries to assign changes in the regulations to Governor and Council, giving it more oversight. The second part will be the ability for the Governor and Council to outline the fees and service and regulations. There'll be no change in fees or proposed amounts in the process. These are meant to streamline the operation of the loan boards and integrate them with the farm loan board, so the two loan boards, even though they work independently, will be able to have the same standards in both industries. And earlier this year, we talked about some changes in the amount that can be loaned in a loan board without having to go to Executive Council. That was in line with the Farm Loan Board and many other changes. We're putting new automation in place when it comes to computer programs, so people will be able to go online very shortly to check on their loans. This is something new to the department, and indeed has been asked for by both the farm and fish loan boards. As we move forward on this, we're going to continue consultation with the fishing industry and the buying industry through the advisory board I set up. It's the only one like it ever in the province of processors and buyers, and indeed with individuals as we move forward in this important work. With that, I'll take my seat.
I recognize the member from Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to stand in my place this afternoon to speak to Bill 160. Mr. Speaker, at first glance it appeared this bill was just a housekeeping act, but in further investigation and consultation, we as a caucus have two concerns about this piece of legislation before us. One would be the purpose of updating, and the other regulation without full consultation. This piece of legislation is looking to change the administrative function of what many people in fisheries and agriculture would consider two dysfunctional loans organizations into a Crown lending agency. Mr. Speaker, the lack of detail and consideration given to stakeholders and new participants trying to enter these two industries is bothering. We're already receiving complaints about the amount of time it takes to process loans. Then there are others who feel they're being mistreated or misunderstood by a system that lacks an insight into their specific operations. This piece of legislation will bring little comfort to new entrants in the Yarmouth area who have recently been turned down by this organization. After last year, the Minister and MLA from Yarmouth's suggestion that things will get easier for new participants, and that has not been the case. Mr. Speaker, I'll table their statements and read from it as follows. Fishing and aquaculture are the backbone of the province, providing good-paying jobs and economic benefits for those living in our coastal communities. The Minister said on behalf of the Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture. He goes on to say the board has helped members from the industries buy new licenses, finance or build new boats, and buy new equipment. And we wanted to continue to offer support for many years to come. Mr. Speaker, we agree that fishing and aquaculture may have opportunities in this province, but this government has not been vigilant in working with all participants, current and future. The Minister's statement rings hollow in the ears of the people on the waters and the fields of Nova Scotia. The other concern for us is regarding the definition of processing. Processing has had a long history of small businesses, mom-and-pop operations in this province. Small businesses that have supported small communities for generations. They're small operations with big impacts on the residents of their small communities. Changing the definition or leaving it to regulation gives us concern. How will ownership of processing change in the future? Will there be outside pressures from other jurisdictions and foreign interests that have no concerns with local communities and its people? Mr. Speaker, we look forward to law amendments and the Minister's response to industry as this bill proceeds through the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the opportunity to speak briefly to this bill, the amendments to the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act. I don't need to restate things that have already been said. We all know that the fishing industry is crucially important to Nova Scotia's economy, and particularly to so many parts of rural Nova Scotia. Halifax is not the center of the universe, and we want vibrant communities and vibrant industries distributed across all of Nova Scotia, and the fishery is really can't be overstated for its importance in doing exactly that, representing $2 billion annually in economic activity. And of course, it also adds significantly to our culture, to tourism. There's many interconnections with other industries. And in some parts of the province in recent years, the thriving fishery has meant that young people are able to return or to stay and to make a good living in our coastal communities. Obviously, buying and processing are crucial components of the industry, and it's important that they are supported and also regulated effectively. So we're welcoming, but also interested to hear from Nova Scotians who may come to law amendments about the amendments to the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act. And certainly we understand the wish to make uniform the processes and the legislation governing the Fisheries and Aquaculture Loan Board, to make that work with the Farm Loan Board as they are, I guess, functioning in parallel fashion within two different departments and with two different industries that are effectively supported by the same government department and with many of the same processes being undertaken. So to the extent that they can be made to work together in a uniform fashion and in a fashion that's fair, we welcome that. A strong framework for buying and processing fish is, of course, important because of the role it plays as a connection to markets for our fish and for fishers, but also because it's an important source of employment in coastal communities. Fish processing is the #1 industry where fishers report income outside of fishing, and it serves as a significant employer for people in Nova Scotia's coastal communities. Indeed, the buying, processing, and fishing sectors are closely intertwined, and fishers should also be consulted around any changes. And of course, also consultations with buyers, processors, and workers in the industry will be important for any significant updates to the regulatory framework. And this is particularly true if there are impacts on the workers who rely on the processors for employment. Work in processing plants is frequently low wage and relies heavily on temporary foreign workers. It's seasonal and it's demanding, and those workers require adequate protection. And we know that labor shortages are an ongoing challenge for fish processing plants. The industry estimates it needs over 600 additional workers a year in Atlantic Canada to make up for vacancies, turnover, and retirement. And that problem needs to be taken into account in any regulatory changes to buying and processing in order to foster the sustainability of the industry and protect rural workers and build thriving rural communities. So we urge the department to be proactive and vigilant to make sure that there are no undue effects for already vulnerable workers in this sector. And I would also urge the department to engage innovative policy options for solving labor shortages in harvesting and processing. For example, the recent labour market information study commissioned by the Canadian Council of Professional Fish Harvesters recommends fisher-processor collaboration to produce and market higher value products. So all in all, I look forward to seeing a consultative and collaborative review that results in a strong framework to support this vitally important industry. And I will also look forward to hearing from fishers and coastal communities at law amendments. Thank you.
If I'm to recognize the minister, it is to close debate on Bill 160.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just a couple of quick comments, and I appreciate the comments from both opposition parties on this. It's a very important topic for all of us. I just want to note that we've made more loans to the fishing industry in the last year than we've probably made in history. And the loans are getting bigger and bigger as the licenses get worth more and more. So it's very positive. On the licensing side, also, there are some really awfully outdated rules. For instance, if you had a fish plant on a county line and you wanted to move it across the other county line, you weren't allowed to do it. It just didn't make any sense. So those sort of things are going to address. Also, if you had a son or daughter or nephew or whoever it might be in succession planning that you wanted to transfer your license to, it was virtually impossible under the old rules. And that sure isn't going to go very far when it comes to encouraging young people to stay in Nova Scotia, take these businesses over and run them. It then would lead to much more investment from outside the country, which sometimes is not that healthy. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I would like to move second reading of Bill number 160.
The motion is for second reading of Bill 160. The motion is for second reading of Bill 160. Would all those in favor please say aye? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Bill number 160, an act to amend Chapter 25 of the Acts of 1996, the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act.
Order that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That concludes government business for today. Sorry to disappoint everyone. I move that the House now rise to meet again tomorrow, Wednesday, October 2nd, between the hours of 1 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. And with tomorrow, of course, being Opposition Day, I pass the floor over to the Honourable House Leader for the official opposition. I heard that. To call tomorrow's agenda.
The member for Inverness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After daily routine and question period, we will be calling bills for second reading. Bill number 143, the Emergency Aid at School Act, as well as Bill number 155, the Healthcare Ombudsman Act. We'll also be calling notices of motion, resolution number 853 for debate. The operative clause being that the Nova Scotia healthcare system, that the government acknowledge that the Nova Scotia healthcare system is in crisis. So we look forward to that business tomorrow.
The motion is that the House will rise to meet again on October 2nd from between the hours of 1 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m. Would those in favour of the motion please say aye? Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned.